Welcome to the Global Peace Lives Online Conversation 2022 Festival Edition. Please join me, Kelly Devine, the Artistic Director, and Nina Strike, the Executive Director, in conversation with Daniel Bernardi, producer and writer of the film Fighter Pilots of Vietnam, directed by Carolina Gratiana. Please remember to check out peacefilmfest.org for all the information about our upcoming festival dates and events in September. Our in-person programming begins September 19th and ends on September 25th, followed by our virtual programming, which begins September 26th and ends on October the 2nd. And now, please join us in welcoming Daniel Bernardi. Daniel, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Hi, Daniel. Good to see you. And let's start by talking a little bit about the film. Tell us about Fighter Pilots of Vietnam.
Well, it's a short film we made, and it's part of a series of films that we made in going back and looking at the Vietnam War. So I had made a film in Vietnam called The American War, which is what the Vietnamese, of course, call the war that we call the Vietnam War. We did a film on all the veterans of that war, from My Lai survivors to guerrillas. That was an intense experience. We developed some good relationships there, and it's a film that was really touching. It's a feature. It's intense. When you meet a My Lai survivor who tells you about what he went through and what he saw his mother go through and how she was killed, and you film him at the scene, you begin to get a sense of the pain and also the courage they had in fighting us. But you also get a sense of the culture. I mean, we were welcome there. We were treated really well. So then when we got back, we reached out to a American who had been shot down in the Vietnam War, Jack Ench. He had been shot down, spent time in the Hanoi Hilton, the where the American prisoners were held, had been tortured, had lost his thumbs. In fact, when he left Vietnam, he stayed in the Navy, and they called him fingers, which is Navy humor for somebody who I guess loses their finger. Kind of morbid, but he was a great guy, and we made a nice film about him. And he was also very forgiving about what he went through. And so then he reached out to us and he said, "Hey, Dan, and you become friends with," and I directed that film on Jack. You become friends with the subjects. You get to know them intimately, I mean, especially in post-production when you're cutting the film over several months and you're really seeing every kind of reaction. And then you're assembling all the B-roll and all the archival and all the family photos. So Jack and I became friends, and he said, "Look, I got some of these Vietnam pilots are coming to the US, and we got some of us pilots, and we're going to get together and we're just going to, shake hands and see if we can get along. You want to film it?" So that was an easy answer. Yes. And so I had my associate director of the Veteran Documentary Corps at San Francisco State, Caroline. I said, "Caroline, I think you ought to direct this. I mean, she has a real gift for storytelling, and she could see the nuance of emotion in story, but also get the conflict, because the film has to have conflict." And I just knew she'd be right for it, even though she hadn't directed. I think she had directed one small piece before that. So she said, "Okay, I'll do it." And so I sent her down with my best crew. And that's how we came to tell the story. It's part of a series where we're really trying to investigate the way in which former enemies forgive and heal, but also remain honored by their service. And it's that kind of conflict. How do you remain honored by service, especially in a war like Vietnam, while still forgiving yourself and forgiving the enemy, and for the Vietnamese to do the same? And so that's what we were trying to get at in that film. And I think Carolina did a good job.
Oh, she did a fantastic job. And I'd also like to maybe draw out a little bit about your approach, not only to this film, but to all of the films at El Dorado Films. Your background is you have been in the service yourself and have seen combat. And so that certainly affects the way you approach these topics and about the way I almost hate to use the word the subjects, the people that you're filming, the way they react to you as well.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm a professor of film at San Francisco State. And so when I got there, I had just come off like my third deployment. In fact, that one was at sea. And I got to the university and with my wife and my two kids, I have three now. And I started seeing all these veterans of the Iraq War, where I served in Afghanistan, and they were suffering. But they also had the great spirit. And since I was a veteran, and the suicide rate is just horrible and painful. And I said, well, I got to do something. I mean, I'm a chair of a film school. It's a top 20 film school. I haven't made a film in a while, but I'm just going to start doing it again. And so I brought in some other directors because I wanted to make a lot of films, and you can't direct them all. And if you're only doing the films yourself, you're not bringing in different perspectives, and you need that energy, you need that creative conflict to really produce stuff that's interesting. And so I just started making those films. And then, some of the veterans, especially the Marines we made, they're like, well, hey, you're messed up. This is what they're telling me. And I'm like, shut up, Marine. I'm in the Navy, so I can do that. I'm fine. I run a film school, and they challenged me to go to the VA. And so I went to the VA and I found out, I was dealing with some issues. And so that just really, that was, about 8-9 years ago, 10 years ago. And I haven't stopped. I think we've made 50 shorts. They're distributed all over the world, from Canopy Education to Amazon. We're starting our own channel, Veteran Documentary Corps, our own sort of like Netflix-like channel. I mean, it won't be like that big like that, but we have tons of films, and we're really exploring the veteran condition in all its manifestations, the diversity of it. And I mean that in every sense of the word. The good, the bad, and the ugly. We deal with resistors. We have a great film called Objector about a young Israeli woman who objected to military service and had to go to jail for it. We've done some American, so we're just really tackling that whole community. And I think because of that, when I sit down, either as a director and I produce all the films, which means I'm very hands-on, so this film, but all films, I think, I can communicate with the veteran and let them know, hey, we're patently anti-war. You can't go through a war and come out being pro-war unless you're a little psychopath. But we're very pro-veteran. And so I think people get that. And then we're not always looking at the veteran as they're wounded. I mean, I was diagnosed with PTSD, and I ran a film school, and I became a dean, and I could live my life. And so we're changed, we're different, right? But we could still contribute, and we have a lot to offer, and we're offering a ton, especially in the leadership world. These veterans have done a lot. So that was the impetus behind it. And I think veterans, some of the older guys from World War II, which we made a lot of those films. I mean, I did a film on a concentration camp liberator, the first American in the first concentration camp discovered by the Allies, Ralph Rush, who passed away a few years ago. Great little film. So, I think they sit with us and they go, okay, these guys are going to tell the truth, the good, the bad, and the ugly, but they're not going to bash. And they're going to sort of respect why we did what we did. And that's a fact. I was against the Iraq War. I served in it. I served, as much as I could with honor, like a lot of my veterans. And that's the line we walk. We could be against something or we could be for it, but we have to execute the orders that are lawful. And so we try to follow that path. And that's what happened with these Vietnam veterans in the film. These pilots, it's not like they wanted to go there and do what they had to do, but they had orders. It was a lawful order. And so they had to execute. And the same with the Vietnamese pilots that are in the film. And so, I think that's right. Yeah.
Well, and so that brings us back to I think what a lot of people watching the film, maybe who don't have any experience, a family member who's in the service, might be surprised at the camaraderie between these former enemies. And I think a word that you had mentioned before about respect, about the honor of service, And could you talk a little bit about, that phenomenon for people who might come to this film and be very surprised to see people who were former enemies shaking one another's hands and sharing the experiences that only they know because they've had the same experience.
Yeah, it's hopefully people find it, beautiful to watch, even though the war itself was horrific. I mean, lots of Americans died in that war, and many, many, many South Vietnamese, millions died. And we cannot lose sight of that. And these veterans haven't. But you take a guy like Jack Ench, who's in the film and who I made a short on, people should see that, Fingers. But Jack is also in the film. And, he's a guy who's shot down, captured, tortured, and as a POW in the same sort of prison John McCain was in. And he comes out and he's able to forgive pretty fast because he understood that the pilots he was going against, he tried to kill, because that's what his mission was. So he's not going to be a hypocrite and hate the people who are following the orders to defend their nation. And so that's the spirit, I think, that El Dorado Films, that we try, we don't always succeed, but what we try to capture is, you take an oath to support and defend the Constitution, to follow all lawful orders. It's not about you, so you don't get to say whether you agree or disagree. All you could do is say, I don't follow an unlawful order. But if the order is lawful, you follow it. And then when it's all done and the order isn't there and you're no longer enemies, your responsibility, and these guys in this film really show that, is to forgive and move on and embrace. And that's why we made the film.
That is a powerful message. And looking at your website for El Dorado Films, right under your About page is the banner Filmmaking for Social Change. And that speaks directly to what our mission is at Global Peace Film Festival, where we try to curate films, certainly to inform people and to tell compelling stories, but also we have a very sincere hope that people will, whenever possible, the message will resonate enough with them to take something back into their own lives or into their own communities to make the world a better place, a more just place. And, if you could speak a little bit about, what you hope people would take away and bring back into their own lives, even if they've not had service in the military.
Yeah, I mean, I think kindness is really important. And I think that it's especially important when you're executing that kindness for people you don't agree with, or that, you don't necessarily sympathize with. I mean, it's easy to be kind to your child, right? I mean, I have 3 children. It's pretty easy. But it's really hard to be kind to somebody that you go, wow, I really disagree with you. But that's what these veterans do on both sides, if you will. And I think that's important. And I think, my experience, I spent 25 years in the Navy, 25 years in the Navy Reserve. I'm trying to retire right now from it, so I'm still in. And I can tell you, of all and this is both sand sailor in the desert, or at Gitmo or something like that, or at sea, one of the things you realize is it's tough love in the military, and lots of tough love. Nobody's gentle, nobody's sugarcoating this, but there's a great deal of kindness. I mean, it might not be with a flower, but if I fall down, I guarantee you somebody's going to be there to pick me up. If I'm hurting, I guarantee you there's going to be somebody coming in and sit down and say, hey, let's talk about this. I mean, we're not out there always showing it, but in my experience, in the Navy and in academia, 25 years in academia, lots of time in Hollywood, they're the kindest people are military people. And I'm and I mean that in every sense of that word. And it's hard to see, because if you've never been in the military, and if you're angered, and maybe rightly so, about 24 years of constant war in Iraq and Afghanistan, it's easy to let that anger, which I think is justified, consume how you see people in the military. But that's what I'm asking viewers to do, is to recognize that it's complicated, it's more nuanced than that. And just because we're in the military doesn't mean we're looking to be in a fight. I served with the Army 5th and 10th Special Forces Group, the Green Berets in Iraq. So here's a Navy guy out with those folks. They were seriously tough. I mean, they were impressively trained. And we went on high value target raids, and they could execute that with amazing courage and precision. But most of them didn't want to be there. And in fact, their motto was to write themselves out of a job. All right, do their job, come home. And they also demonstrated great professionalism and poise on target. I mean, you basically had to shoot at them before you were going to be shot, or they were going to return fire. So I think people don't see that. People need to see that. People understand that. The American military is, has its flaws, but it's fairly professional. Well, very professional, especially special forces, as is the Vietnamese. As is, we shot films in Israel, we've shot in France, we've shot all over the world. We've made films about the Italian military. So there's a commonality there of kindness that I think gets lost in the fact that our mission is kinetic and violence.
That message of kindness is so important for everybody of course, in the military, but actually not in the military, everybody who's not in the military as well. So I think everybody can take something away from what you've just said. So tell us about what people can do who are watching this to support your work, and also tell us what's coming up for you.
Yeah, I mean, people, we're launching a TV channel, like a Netflix type of thing via Vimeo, called Veteran Documentary Course. Should be launched in a month and a half or something like that, maybe by the time the festival's out. We put a lot of time into it. They can watch our films there. It'll be modest amount, just enough to keep the lights on. We don't do this for profit. We make our films out of a university and we distribute them out of Eldorado Films, because universities don't distribute films. Our filmmakers are all professionals. So they're real documentaries, they're not profiles. So that's one way. But a lot of people don't want to do that. They can watch our films on Amazon. They can watch our films on Canopy. They can watch other films. I think people should, if they want to support what we do, explore military and veteran cinema on the documentary front, really interrogate it, and try to go out of their comfort zone and watch things that they might not normally want to watch. Avoid the raw war stuff because it's not realistic, and it just perpetuates some stereotypes, and to challenge themselves. That would be what we would love. What's coming out for me next is I just finished a film and started entering it in festival called Ultimate Sacrifices, Captain Jennifer Moreno. It's a feature documentary. We put a lot of love into this film. It's about a young Latina whose mother had illegally entered the US, I believe. Her and her 4 kids lived in a garage type place. They went on to join JROTC and go on get college. Some of them joined the Army. She joined the Army, became a nurse after a scholarship at University of San Francisco, went Ranger, and lost her life trying to save another. And a lot of people don't know this story. So it's a powerful American story that is literally bootstraps. This is a person who really pulled themselves up against some serious adversity on the racial and gender front to do amazing things, to give her life for the country, to save another, a Ranger. And so I want people to see that women serve, women of color serve, have given their life, and to maybe think about that when they start defining what American is in an age in which our country is under great stress, what that means. So we have that film coming out. We have a couple of shorts coming out too. One on a navigator who was in the Ramstein air disaster and served in Iraq, and another on a sailor, the woman who sued DOD so that women could serve on ships and in combat. And so she passed away a couple years ago, but we got to film her. So we got some films coming out that we hope people will find meaning from, mostly focused on women, but we're continuing with our whole look at navigators and pilots.
Fantastic. We definitely will through, we're so glad we've gotten connected with you. We love to keep pointing to our alumni filmmakers whenever something new comes out. So we will definitely be, alerting folks to any new material through our social media channels. So thank you for letting us know about all that upcoming great work, Daniel.
Terrific, absolutely.
And thank you so much for taking the time and the thoughtfulness in our conversation today. I know I got a lot out of it, and I know anyone watching got a lot out of it. And for those folks watching, thank you as always for coming to the Global Peace Film Festival YouTube channel to watch our glows. Please do, if you are interested in looking into more of the films by Daniel Bernardi, please go to eldoradofilms.net for more information. I understand they are going to be updating the website shortly, so please do keep checking in for updates there. Again, that's eldoradofilms.net. And again, in September, we are gearing up for the 20th anniversary Global Peace Film Festival. Our in-person programming begins September 19th and ends on September 25th, followed by a week of virtual access beginning September 26th and ending October the 2nd. All the information about our film schedule and other festival-related events can be found on peacefilmfest.org. Thank you, and we'll see you at the next Glow.